Hi everybody, welcome back. Well, we are just pressing on. So what are we doing on this episode? Which is, yep, it's the last one for this car until the summer breaks, but whatever. What we're doing is we are trying to figure out, first thing is what we're going to be using for an electrical system in the car. What do you mean by that? I mean like this, right? Well, I'll wait to show you what I have. But what I am is I'm going to be using a Mark III Volkswagen fuse box. It's just for sheer reliability and information that's out there. Because the more information you have on something, the better it is. And the whole thing is, when I sit there and look at it going, I never ever had a problem with the Mark III, as an electrical system. The early Quattros with this fuse box, I had tons of problems with, and I never really had a problem with the 4000 Quattro fuse box after, but there's some real shortcomings in it that I really don't like, and it's also a packaging issue, and a few other, there's some small things, let's just say that. So come on over to the bench and let me show you what I mean. Here are the three fuse boxes that I wanted to show you what they were. This right here is a one out of 83 and before, basically. I think 83 to halfway through 83, they changed to this fuse box, but let's stick with this. This is the one that came in the original Quattros. And anything 1983, 83 and a half and before, this is what they used. These things were not very good. What happened is they used to short on it, and the factory actually put out an updated harness for the fuel pump. What it does, it took the power off of the fuse box and put it through a separate relay, so that way it would not draw through the power through the fuse box and burn it out, because if you have your AC on, and all the other ancillaries and lights and all that stuff, it just overheated and blew the fuse boxes. I replaced like 2 or 3 of them in my older Quattro. And I got fed up with it, but I replaced the one in the Quattro with this, but we'll get onto that here in just a second. Then Audi developed this. This was like, definitely 84 and above, because I saw some 83 Quattros with this, like half of the 83 and a half and above had these. This is a much larger fuse box, as you can see, about 1 inch longer and about 1 inch wider, a little thinner. But it's a very robust fuse box. It really worked fine. I thought it did. But there was a couple of, one real shortcoming, but there's 2 shortcomings for me that I didn't like about it. The first one is the plugs that go in here, they aren't locked in. And I had a problem a couple times where I was doing some wiring or changing something, and I accidentally pulled the wire off. And it didn't look like it was out. It was just out just a little bit, so things were kind of screwy. And I'm sitting there going, what's going on? And that was annoying. And the second thing is, this is an awful lot larger piece in order for me to fit in the place where this originally existed. Let's leap into Corrado land. When I was redoing Corrados for TDIs, what it is I got really good with CE2. This is what the nickname is. Everybody calls it CE2 wiring, but it's a Mark III wiring, Corrado, B3 Passat, stuff like that. And this, I never had problems with wiring. They were really robust fuse boxes. And the thing is, one thing I really, really liked about it is this. See this? This is a lock. What happens is you put the connectors inside here, and you lock them so they cannot come out. They are not just press fit with a clip in them. They are press fit in, they press them in, and you lock them mechanically. They do not come out. Another thing is, if you sit there and you cannot push this closed, one of the connectors is not fully seated. So that kind of eliminates a lot of the mysteries when you're trying to do stuff. It's just like, oh, I know they're fully seated, because it locked in. Okay, I'm good to go. And I have tons of literature on these, and I'm very, very comfortable using these. Another thing is, if you take a look at the actual width, they are almost exactly the same in width, length, whatever you want to call it. So they fit into the original position very, very well. This is the original fuse box mount came from the 5+5. What this does is it goes in here, the fuse box. They use a screw right there. They screw it in, and that locks the fuse box in. What I got in, well, what I got to do is, as you see, when you have this fuse box in like that, it will not use, there's way too much play and it's just all over the place, So I got to modify this. No, what I'm going to do, the good thing is the Mark III's unbolt. I think this one actually from a Passat. It just goes right in there like this. Locks in like that, and then I got to cut this to the position where it's going to stick up inside and have me. The big thing is I got to have the ability to work on it, So I'm going to come down as low as I can, as far as I can in there. But the first thing I have to do is I have to put the steering column in, I have to put the clutch pedal in, I have to do all that stuff, put that in to figure out I have no obstructions with this. Plus I have to put the bottom console in, because you don't want to have to, have this all welded in, then trying to go put the bottom console in and just like, get re-weld it. That's not what I want to do, So let's go over, let me throw the steering column in. The steering column's in. Let me throw the brake booster in and the clutch pedal in and all that stuff. And that way we can figure out where exactly are we going to make this, this system right here fit that, Let's get going. I just wanted to go, just a real quick thing. This is the 4000 Quattro pedal assembly. This is a Coupe GT pedal assembly. Basically, two-wheel drive, four-wheel drive. And what it is I'll show you the differences in them. Very few. You got a lug right here, the clutch slave cylinder, the clutch master cylinder bolts to. And the pads on the 4000 Quattro are actually about a centimeter long. So you can take a look here, that to the right there, so it's pretty small indentation, pretty small minor things. Everything else is virtually identical. You can tell this brake pedal curves over and this thing curves this way. I'm going to put this in and see how it looks. I might have to go to this and modify it to make it look like a 4000 Quattro, so we can have the clutch cylinder on it. Because if you take a look at this, right here, this is where the cable goes on the Coupe GT. The 4000 Quattro had it, and all they did was added the lug. So if we have to, depending on how the pedals sit, because it's a little bit more offset than this, if these things don't, see this is more straight down, this is a little bit more offset. If this thing actually fits better, it'd be great. If it doesn't fit as good as this, we're going to have to go to this and modify this pedal. It's not hard. Just have to weld a little bit of metal in there and I'll figure out something. But other than that, let's throw this in there. Let's see what it looks like, see how it works, and we will get on to the rest of it. This is where the back of that console now goes. Here is the original mount right here. Here's the original mount right there. I have a feeling, because seeing how we only have, let's see, from here to here, we have about 3 inches. We might be able to bring it out a little bit more, but I don't think so, because we have the back portion of this which sticks out. So I'm going to have to use the original mounts that are here. I'm going to grind on the sides and keep it pretty much the same height is kind of what I want to do. So let me go grab that and we will put that in, and because we got tons of room back here, and this is the only thing I wasn't concerned about for wiring is how much room I have back here. And we have lots and lots of room. So I'm going to keep it the same height, cut the other one, and just go onto the sides like this, and to keep it this way, not that way, because just in case I need something around here, I'm that's kind of the whole deal with that. Let me go grab the two fuse boxes and let's see if we can make it work. Looks pretty good to me, and we have expansion possibilities up here on the top of the fuse box. I thought that was going to be a lot harder than it was. You know, I didn't know I was going to be copying that. I thought it was going to be completely different. Even though I have done in the Air Quattro box is actually a little bit, the way they designed it was a little different, which is kind of odd because I looked at it again and I never realized it, but you know, whatever. Next thing is what we have to do. Pull this back out. Here, let me bring you over here. Here's a problem that we have. Well, it's not really a problem. Here's the plate that we have to make. We have to convert this right here is where the cable for the clutch went. We have to convert this plate right here for two things. First thing, we have to have the clutch master cylinder in here and stable and figure out what clutch master cylinder we're going to use. Second, we have to have a hole big enough to run the 5 or 6 plugs that come in through the front of the Mark III harness into the back of the fuse box. Let's go over to the desk. I'm going to show you what I'm looking for and some of the information I have on those on that fuse box in the Mark IIIs. Well, here is the computer. This is one of the websites that I used when I was doing Corrado TDI conversions, and I did a Cabrio TDI conversion. You know, and it's fantastic. This is just one of the many sites I used. But what it is, it's A2 Resource. I think it's a2resource.com possibly. I'm not really sure. But they have this up. It's called the Central Electric 2. And that's, I think, the reason why I got the nickname CE2 is because everybody was using it for this. Now, when you take a look at it, you look at it, go Central Electric, and this is in Volkswagens. It covers 89 and 99 Golf and Jettas, Boras also, 90 to 97 Passat, all Cabriolets, Corrados, and Eurovans. So the fuse box is very common, which means in the future you'll be able to buy parts for it and actually get, there's so many cars that was made for it that it will be out there so you can, you know, use the parts to make your car keep going. Now, what am I taking a look at? Well, I'm looking at only the wiring for the front of the car. The lights, you know, all the little miscellaneous stuff, that windshield wiper, stuff like that, you know. And only thing I do is I scroll down and I says, okay, well, what do I need? I need A1, which is the front wiring harness left. A2, front wiring harness right. Then I can keep going down. It says, okay, B, headlight washer system. Well, we're not going to have that, so we don't need that. We got number C, which is the basics, low coolant level sensor, radiator, you know, brake fluid sensor, all that stuff. We're going to have that. D is miscellaneous equipment. And then we go down to instrument wiring harness. E, F, we have engine compartment right side. G1, engine compartment right side, and G2, another engine compartment right side. This is, you know, a whole bunch of small things in it, but you know, we're going to be having those plugs into the cabin. And you can further go down. I went through it to find out which one. You have S, which is the wiper motors, which is we're going to have to feed it through the same plug. That's what we're going to get. Now, when I took the fuse box back out, I'm looking at it, going, oh, A1, A2, okay, and we need C, we need F, we need 3 yellows, 3 white or 4 whites, and that's pretty much it for the front, is what we need. Let's go in, what I did was I went and grabbed a bunch of old harnesses. I swear I thought I had a complete facade harness out there, but here's all the plugs, what it is. And the only thing I do is I look at it going, all right, well, if I'm looking at it like this, yep, looking at it like that, I gotta make sure they fit. So what do is I pull my locking tab back. Yep. Like that. That's in, and it locks. So we don't really need to split all our harnesses right away. What we need to do is roughly, how much wiring is going to go there. You're looking at, with all this wiring, at least a 1-inch hole. And for the grommet, we also have on this, we'll use this because it's roughly a 1-inch grommet. We'll just use that and we'll measure everything to this right here. And this is what we'll use as the through hole. So that looks, what does that look like? Probably 1.5 inch hole that I'm going to have to cut. That'll give me an indication of where all the wires are going to go through and how it's going to look. Let's also go look at the other thing that we have to put in that plate. That's the clutch master cylinder. Clutch master project time. This is what I'm going to use. Drafting cable, pretty thick stuff. We're going to have to inset it more into the cabin anyway, so I might as well use the thickest steel I can. This right here, if you want to keep the same clutch master cylinder with the clutch slave cylinder intended for the drivetrain, it's a 5000S. This was out of the 5000S. If you take a look, it's fairly long. It's a 19mm clutch master cylinder. If we take a look at 4000 Quattro, which is the same, basically it's the same thing, they are exactly the same. The only thing is, this one has studs that you put bolts on it on the other side of the firewall. This one is actually internal. This is just like an Quattro. Our Quattro is bolted right up. But there's a real problem with these things, especially trying to unbolt them. What it is, take a look at this. This right here is from a 97 or 1990 to 97 Passat, and it's from the early Corrados, up to 95. If you look right here, this is the pressure line output fitting that goes in here. Well, they're exactly the same for both. So, but this one goes out the side. Means nothing, but I have the fitting of the correct size there. If you look at the body of this has been inset into the actual cabin. And if you look at that, they're both 19mm and both bodies are pretty much exactly the same. So it's gonna work. Now, why would I want to use this instead of something like that? Take a look at the flanges and take a look at the flanges. The reason why is this flange is on this side. What does it mean? I can get an extension with a socket on it and just yank the bolts out really fast. You can pull it super fast, no problem. These were a pain. This one, you had to use a wrench inside here to get up. It's the same thing as the Quattros. Quattros are even worse. This was in the cabin. The Quattros was actually in the other side of the firewall, in the engine compartment. This one wasn't too bad, but when it was sitting up there, you had to use an extension, with like a universal to get it. Still a pain. I thought it was annoying. I like them on both sides. Much, much better. If I could get away with it, I would use this. This is from a Mark III Jetta and Golf. These things are great because they're a little bit wider, so they push as much fluid, pretty much as much fluid, but I'm not really sure. This is the reason why I'm kind of hesitant on it, even though I'd much rather use it because they're more plentiful, and I think they'll be more plentiful down the road. But these will be much more plentiful than either of these, hands down. And if I can get the firewall set up so I can just bolt it in and not do any adjustment, just put the clutch pedal in and just go, I have a feeling that might be the actual way to go on this build, and you can get it in and out and it'd be so much simpler. So let's first start cutting this thing up, and I'm going to start measuring it and fitting the clutch master cylinder to it. Then we'll figure out how much we need then to put a hole in it for the wiring harness. So let me get my goggles and stuff on, and we'll just start blasting this thing out. Here I'm going to get just an initial hit. This is the 4000 Quattro. This is the lower part of the chassis for the Audi rally car. The only thing I'm doing is I'm trying to get a rough relationship of where the clutch master cylinder is stock. That's all I'm trying to do. So what did I do? I bent up some wire. I put one through one hole, one through the other, and it gives me a rough place where I can just pinpoint it and just like, okay, this is roughly where the clutch master cylinder is going to be. All I'm doing is just doing triangulation, you know, because once these things are in, they're not going to go anywhere. This will give me a rough idea where it is, and then we're gonna have plenty of leeway moving it up and down when I have that plate in there. But the first thing is we just have to get just a rough estimate of where it's going to be, so I can just start drilling the holes. You know, once again, just put this in here, put that in here, and see, you can just take your pen and pop it and say, okay, well that's good enough. Because once it's in there, then we're going to set it back, move it up and down, whatever way we can to make the clutch master cylinder work for that car. That's the main thing. So let me go over there, put the plate in there, mark it, and we'll start drilling it up. One more thing, I got to take out all of these holes. What it is seeing how we're making a plate, we have to cut these holes out so we can have the clutch master cylinder body come through. We can move it around and adjust it to where the pedal is, or the least amount of binding and the best angle we can with the pedal. So let me just cut those out and we'll be all set to go. All right, let me bolt up this assembly to where the brake booster is supposed to be. Let me just grab a couple of bolts, throw it in there, and I think we're going to be, then we'll figure out exactly how we're going to, or how it'll set up, because actually with me just bending that down, it put it right on line. I might have to bring it up a little bit, but I think that's going to be okay. There's a little bit more trimming I'm going to have to do right there, you know, to get around this, but doesn't look that bad, you know. Yeah. Before we start welding anything in, I have to get the plug for the wiring harness to go through there. And I think right there seems to be good because we're drilling a hole anyway. There's my grommet. That's what I got to make fit right here. Or actually it'll look like that. I got to make the hole. Well, it's a little small, but what I gotta do is I'll use this, because I don't have anything that matches that. I'll use this right here, get a nice hole right there, hog it out with the die grinder, and make this thing fit real nice. This is how it's gonna look. This is where the wire is gonna come out, and this is the where it's gonna be. So, or the clutch master is gonna be. Well, that's how it's going to look into the cabin. I think it's much cleaner than having those 4 holes there. What I got to do, clean this, clean that. Basically set it up on the clutch pedal to where I think through the full travel of the pedal, this doesn't bind. That's the big thing. And after I get that all, I'm gonna rudimentary weld it in. You know, tack it in, but I'm just gonna, it's gonna have to be extended out into this, but I have to pull everything out in order to do that first. So let's go throw this back in, hook it up to the clutch pedal, and see what we got. That's pretty much where it's going to go. The camera, it's being blocked by the camera because you can't see it, but the master cylinder looks really close to being right on equal. It's a little bit up because the thing is when you push the pedal down, it's going to rotate the piston up and down. So you need a little bit like that. It's not a little bit, I'm going to put it at a little bit of an angle, but let me pull it back out again and clean up the rest of this. I've got to pull this down, which I didn't want to do, but I will. And that way I can clean up the rest of that, get that all squared away, and then start tacking it in. Because we're still going to have to trim more of the internal part over here, but once that's welded in down through here, down through there, I think we can cut it, bend it in, and use that as another part of the section to box out all the entire chassis, or the entire box into the chassis. Well, that's tacked in. It's not fully stable, but it's tacked. What I have to do for this is I have to trim out all this excess that I have there. Then I got to pull the steering rack so I can clean up all that stuff and mold around the clutch master cylinder. Right now, I can push it, but it kind of flexes because there's nothing over on the right-hand side of it to stabilize it. So I can't finish anything until I pull that out. Another thing I'm leaving you in the lurch for. Well, let's go over to the passenger side. Let me show you what I have to do over there. This is what we have to put in on the right-hand side of the car. What it is, this is the engine harness. It also has all the emission control still in it. It's an uncut harness that I pulled out of a 91 2 and a turbo 20 valve. Now, what it is that seeing how I have two holes on the right-hand side. One hole, it was for the original, I think this was for the original ECU right there, which is probably a 1-inch hole. And I have the big, huge hole down at the bottom for the air conditioning condenser, where that was. Now, the thing is, you're probably saying, well, why don't you just use that big hole? That way you can just cut a hole in a plate and weld it in. Well, I don't want to do that because it's so close to the exhaust on the downpipe. I want to get it as far away from that as possible. So I am going to use this hole, and I am going to expand it out with a die grinder, and it's going to be long, tedious, and slow. Expect it. And then I'm going to make a plate for the bottom. What this does, though, I use the original grommet that came in the 220 valve, and what it gives me ports right here that I can run. Let's say I want to run the rear window washer fluid to the back and not have a reservoir back there, because that's probably what I'm going to do is use a double stage pump. I'll run it through here. I want a vacuum lines to the back vacuum reservoir, so I can do the door locks and all that stuff. I have another line right here. And there's a whole bunch of small things I can run through this, because they're uncut. I can cut them and then just run it. To me, that's kind of a win-win situation. Because it gives me a possibility of expansion. Sorry for harping on it all so much, but this is what it does. Now, what I did was I initially measured up the internal part of the grommet. What do I have? Yeah, it's roughly 62 millimeters. You can't really tell with the floppiness of the rubber. I just got an exhaust pipe like that, and you go, oh, okay, that's roughly, actually that's 61 mil, something like that. This will I can just start grinding away and finding out, okay, well, that's, this thing will basically fit in, pretty much inside a hole that I grind out. When I pick that back up, oh God, and that way it'll just go in, and then I know what it is. So that's pretty much it. So let me get my gear on. Let me start grinding that up. I'm going to probably have to pound some of the firewall out to make it flat so this thing fits in really nice, and we will get the rest of this thing squared away. Well, looks like I have a good ridge all the way around to make it seal to. So let's see if we can put the wiring harness through it, make sure it's big enough. That way we can put the grommet on and then figure out some of the other stuff. Wow. It conformed and fits. Jeez. I thought that was going to be harder. Well, let me make the plate for the bottom. That way we can get this thing coming out where the condenser was and get that plate all set up. It's just a standard circle plate. Let me just go grab something. Let me figure out what it is. Well, I went and measured that hole on the condenser on the bottom. Well, I'm going to give you a little tip. If you go out and buy peanuts from Planters Peanuts or whatever, and you have the cap, well, it's pretty much exactly what you want, because you want, about, this much 10 mil around where you're going to need to weld it to. And this is pretty much right on the money. There we go. So what I want to use for that plate, well, I want it to actually look kind of stock, like it was supposed to be welded in there. It's not, but hey, listen, we're going to run with this. I went and got this. This is the, you know, from the back of the coupe, one of the panels I chopped out. And if you take a look, if you put this right here, okay, you know, I got plenty of metal, I can do it. And look at this scallop right here. Remember, we have to put the drain valve for the intake air box or air filter box. And where it's right here, this is the one-way valve. If you put it like right there, and you have this scallop, it actually looks like it's supposed to be there. So when I cut it around and I pound this down to make it flat, so this thing fits in seals, when it drips down, it'll drip down like this, and it'll actually look like it's supposed to be there. I think it's kind of funny. I'm gonna see what it looks like, but let me first cut it. Hey, listen, humor me. Let me cut this up, and I'm gonna grind it all off and get my stuff on and all that, and pound it down and make a hole for this. But I think it's gonna look pretty cool. Then again, I might have to throw this away and we'll do something else. But let's try this. All right, let me get my stuff on and try and make this work. Well, it's locked on. What do you think? It's gonna go like that. Not bad. Oh, that fits pretty. Yeah, that fits pretty nice. Here's the drain one-way valve right there. Looks really good, I think. And we'll go right up into the bottom part of that air filter assembly. Now let's go to the back and I'll show you what I'm going to use for a battery cable.